Okay, we'll call to order the Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 meeting of the Northampton County General Purpose Authority. Mark, would you like to take roll?
Mr. Langen?
Present.
Mr. Donahue?
He's on his way.
Expected. Mr. Dowd is absent. Mr. Chavone is absent. Ms. Ferraro? Ms. Whitaker?
Here.
Mr. Copeland?
Here.
And Mr. Lucius?
Here.
And attending for Northampton County DCED, Tim Hurlinger, Mark Hartney, Dave Hughes, and Sarah Ortiz.
Okay, in your packet we have the minutes from the November 7th, 2017 meeting. They were also provided via email last week. Comments, amendments? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Whitaker, seconded by Mr. Copeland. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let the record note Mr. Donahue is here. Treasurer's report. Dave, you want to take us through that real quick?
Okay. As I've done the last couple of reports, I've shown you an accounting of all the accounts over the last couple of months. And whenever you see a check and a D, that means that there's a check and a deposit, which is related to P3 account, so it's actually a wash on the account. If you have any questions, I think everything's pretty detailed there. Total deposits as of 10/31 is $2,742,555.54. On the balance sheet, and I've made a note to Neil, you'll see in the accounts payable section, there's a 104,940.12. There's one in accounts payable with a negative and one in accounts payable for a positive. It's a wash. I've been told by the accountant that's where I put those entries in. I'm actually talking with Debbie Borger tomorrow. I don't want to touch the QuickBooks until I talk to her to make sure all the entries are okay. I mean, the balances in the accounts are right. I just need to make sure the accounting's right. And I should have everything straightened out tomorrow.
Okay, I'll move to approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
Second, Ms. Whitaker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Invoices,
Invoices
there's only
for
two. One for Northampton Community College. The board had approved previously for Sarah Ortiz to go take a QuickBooks course, which I'm very happy about. She's taken it. So that's the one. And the other is for the DCED for the fourth quarter. I just assumed since we're meeting in December, I'd get the approval now. I won't pay the check. I won't write the check until January, though. It'll complete simple year.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I think we need a motion to approve those.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Copeland. Second, Ms. Ferraro. All those in favor?
Aye.
And again, I've included the all the expenses year to date.
Okay. Public comment? Seeing none, record continues. Moving on, new business. 5-point touchstone.
I have to recuse myself from this conversation because I happen to be on the member of the board of Touchstone Theater.
Okay, Lisa Jordan and Bill are here to give a presentation relative to a $40,000 request for a grant for a festival that they plan in 2019. You're on.
Morning.
Good morning, welcome.
Morning.
proposal about steel balance instead of our gross community project back in 1998.
inspired by the closing of the steel and looking at the effect on our community. Then in 2005, we did a 3-day project called Strong Closing of Bethlehem. That was, the mission was to bridge the gap between Anglo and Latino communities in the south side of Bethlehem. And we did that through a theatrical experience with outdoors, with bilingual, travel across the communities. And we've done several, the Fox Forward 10 years, and our most recent included one called Turns and Roots. That one explored the idea of others and how community acts with others. It was inspired by the thousands of Chinese tourists that came to Bethlehem by the bus road to the San Francisco and Chinese tourists. So we've done these two things over the years. These are every 3 to 4 years. They take a lot of time to develop. They can be really unpredictable because we're working together as a community to bring something new. And we can also be very powerful. And hand it over to Bill, who's a Touchstone founder, fellow ensemble member, and practice coordinator at Bethlehem Band. He'll talk specifically about the community impact that we see the potential of Bethlehem Band and community.
I think we should just let Lisa talk. She's doing a wonderful job. This is difficult to get my arms around in 10 minutes, which is what I'm aiming here. Well, as Lisa was saying, we do these periodic pieces where we actually use the community and the material of the community to create art. And it was in 1999 that we did Steel Bound, which was a folk festival. And that was a very important experience for us because we really engaged and participated in helping our community through that traumatic transition. And now, in 2019, we're looking at the 20th anniversary of that, and we want to come back and say, okay, where are we now as a community? And the whole purpose of this is transformation. Now, I'm going to try and break this little talk into 3 parts. One is context, 2 is process, and 3 are some of the details of the festival. And so context, our community is going through, Touchstone believes, so much change right now. In the family, in education, in technology, in our culture, diversity, that it's kind of difficult. We went through this period with, antique back in the Moravian community in the mid-1800s, Protestantism, and the pragmatism, and the Industrial Revolution came, and when the steel died, there was really an ending to that whole sense of who we were. And as a community, we judge that we really kind of don't know who we are anymore. There's a big, it's up for grabs. There's no center of gravity, to our identity. Are we the Christmas city? I think that given the diversity, we realize that doesn't really quite work. There's a struggle culturally between the entertainment business and tourism, letting money decide our culture as we move forward, versus a sense of authenticity. Who are we authentically? And so as we attempt to bring ourselves back together to try and get the community to look at this, who are we? What are we scared of? What are all these changes? What do we actually collectively think about it? Where do we want to go? How do we want to shape the future of our community? So the purpose of this festival, it comes down to the center of this kind of moment in history, and attempts to honor the past, celebrate what we've accomplished, and then envision collectively the future. So the process then, we've already been working for a year. I have been meeting with literally hundreds of people and organizations, and particularly in the context of the South Side and that it was named recently the Southside Arts District, but there's no arts part of that. It's basically a kind of making people to come and buy stuff at the local stores initiative. The thing is that we are saying, well, if we partner with the Bach Choir of Bethlehem and Arts Quest and God's Beginning and the Southside Film Festival and Montreal, very nice, and the Banana Factory. And this festival is, Touchstone is leading this partnership to create this 10-day festival in October. And we've begun this conversation and collaboration. Now, it's very exciting. Each of these organizations has a particular, they look at these questions, these basic three questions. What are the challenges we're facing as a community? We're a person, what are we scared of? What do we need to do as a community? What are the values we need to have in order to face these successfully? What kind of future do we really want? This is an extraordinary exercise in democracy to make art, and we're partnering with the city. They have a 3-year plan for the Southside Arts District, which is going to go into its second phase right after this festival. So working with Alicia and Darlene and Missy from the Southside, the city will be brought into the festival. Now, we're creating a number of things, which I will detail in a bit. But around these events, let's say it's a series of performances, we will also have group meetings, community meals, panel discussions. There'll be measurements of the till and coming and going in the small stores to see the economic impact. And we are really looking not just for a cathartic emotional exchange of ideas, but also hard data and ideas to help the city plan this next 3-year, to make this next 3-year plan. Talking to the African American community, or the Latino community, or the LGBT community, or women, or children, or teenagers, in these hundreds of discussions and group meetings. Obviously, we had hundreds of ideas. Nay, thousands of ideas of things that we could do. And the process then is to look at where's the overlap. And we find an overlap certainly around diversity, the sense of emerging diversity, and that this scares a lot of people. People are like, we're going to lose who we are as we move into this more heterogeneous community. This includes women's equality of men and women, which is one of the most fundamental changes that's happening to us culturally. Another is the youth. Obviously, if we're going to be doing a festival about the future, the voice of the youth and what they want and what they care about has to be central. There's a tension between the work community, the work culture, and the family. We see work going into the home, people working at home. We see women moving into the workplace, and this tension between bottom line values versus more collective values is a really interesting issue. The other is the fabric of our community itself, the sense that everything is connected, but we don't necessarily have institutions that are broad enough to really look at that. Someone might be on the street because of education, or housing issues, or health, ability to pay for health. Everything's connected. The way we work is a little bit more limited. And the sense that we need to open up and work or envision this more collective view of who we are as a community, that we're all affecting each other. So these are some of the major themes of the festival. Now, as we work forward, we come up with many ideas, more than we can possibly put in this 13-day festival, this 10-day festival, starting on the 3rd, which is on the 13th of October. I mean, just one small example is a recipe book. So, and I'm kind of excited about this, is that because when you look at food, it's a great emblem of culture. And by looking at Puerto Rican culture or Arabian culture or African, and bringing recipes together in a beautifully made book which features not only the story, not a recipe that they like, but something that comes from their heritage and where they came from. We can create this, I don't know what the right word is, this cultural sampling of who we are. But also working with businesses who also can make contributions to this, so that we recognize the culture of food. And we want food to be woven into all aspects of this festival. Another, this advancing diversity, just ring a bell when I run out of time. With advancing diversity is so important to quality of living. So we're looking back at that 20-year period, 1740 to 1761, when Bethlehem was a general economy. Everything was shared. Women had incredibly important leadership opportunities. There was marriage between black and white. There was free health care, whatever you might consider health care, but for everyone, and we walked away from it. So this is a great way of going into the taproot of who we are and understanding issues of gender, issues of equality, issues of economy, and saying, well, what can we learn as we move forward? So we'll probably be doing a piece with 3 narrators. There'll be we call it Seth Roland, and we have diversity writing a book. It's not finished yet. We're working with Transform Valley Theater, doing it in the Single Sisters House, plus another site, which is handicapped accessible, and then bringing experts in to talk about these principles. Why did we move away from it? And so we understand more who we were and where we want to go. So that's a diversity and racial piece. One of the things that I'm most excited about is business culture. And we're working with several businesses. Recently, Lost Born, fascinating story of the family struggling to build that business, and the choices and the values that were instituted. And so we'll be creating a piece, planning over the next year, and bringing in different businesses to talk about this tension between family values and business, and helping to shape the creation of the piece. So the art itself should be a lot of fun or interesting or moving, but the process by which it's made will also bring businesses together to work on these more subjective aspects that they all share together in our problems as we advance our community and the culture of our community. I think I'm going to, those are 2 examples. I'll give you one more. Prometheus Redux. In 1999, when we did Prometheus Bound, there was a character, Prometheus, who was chained to the top of a 27-ton ladle. And at the end of that play, he jumps down. I get emotional every time I tell the story. I was Prometheus. And he says, let's go. Let's build the community. Let's move forward. Let's not hold on to the past. It's 20 years later now, and that Prometheus character is on the street. So we're going to, why is he there? What is the dysfunction? And this allows us to create a drama, and particularly, we're looking at dialogues between steelworkers and their children, and the tension between one generation and the next about the values of the previous generation and the values of the next generation. And looking to create something that opens and sheds light on, and hopefully builds a dialogue between generations so that we can work this together. So this is the role of art in our sense, and the possibility to touch minds, to deal with specific civic issues and city issues, as well as touch hearts, is the whole enchilada. And so I'm going to end with that. And I do think it's important to understand, and I usually end with this by reading this. The entire project itself can perhaps be our best example of the answer we're trying to imagine. A future that is collaborative, broadly inclusive, creative, artful, socially responsible, and simply great fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the work you've done over the last 20-plus years is to be applauded. I mean, it's been to see you guys grow and keep building, it's amazing for everything you've done for the community at large. Any other festivals going on in that range, October? I mean, I know Bethlehem's typically pretty. Yeah, but I mean, you have the Celtic Classic, and then yeah. Is end of September.
Yes, it was October.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the economic impact of having more. I mean it's a positive thing. I mean if you're going to be doing events over, several nights, you're going to be bringing lots of people into the community. So not only the artistic element of it, but I'm sure the business owners will be very, very happy again.
Artist Quest also says they don't really know what they want to do with October. There's some question about what they might move in. So we're in communication.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
Couple of questions on funding. Looks like a big chunk you're planning to get from the NEA. I just wondered where that stood.
We'll find in April, and this is a. There's risk involved. There's no guarantee we'll get back 100,000. I do want to say that if we don't get that, there's also the Conservative Foundation, which is particularly not a national foundation. And then there are other possibilities, Plan C's, and but this is so tailored for our town. I think it makes sense to move forward if we can get that. The plan by which we're making this, which was put together over a year ago, has us retooling our goals in April. In other words, if we don't get that $100,000 plus, we have other areas, we will then. So in other words, for instance, I didn't talk about several international companies who would be joining us and helping us in this work. Well, maybe we don't have 4 international companies. There's someone for the Asian community, someone for the Polish, someone for the Hispanic or the Asian community. There are ways that we can tighten the screws on this, and we're good. Maybe something's not built out of this big open staircase
Continuing on that line, I did see all the letters from the city of Bethlehem, and I have talked to Alicia about it, but I don't see any funding from the city. I'm wondering, have you?
That's a lovely.
Well, you're at the county, so, and this is a city project, so I just thought I'd.
There is in-kind in the budget. Imagine police and permit support. When we talked to the mayor, and the mayor was the first person we actually met with over a year ago. He sat us down and said, "The city's not giving you any money." We didn't know anything. So our position is that we kind of got to go against the headwinds until people realize, hey, this is a good thing. And the city has come a long way with Alicia, Darlene's real support. And then the last time I brought up the fact that we were getting relatively more money to the city, they were saying, well, we'll see what we can do about that.
And Lehigh?
Lehigh has been great in regards to, I think there's a letter there from Seth Mobley from the South Side Initiative. And we would expect some money from them, not God, but they're prepared, though it's not. I don't think we have anything from them to give to the budget.
I guess my thought at this point is I love your passion. I've been to many of your productions. I love Touchstone. I'm just finding it somewhat outside of our purview, and I don't know that I can express it better than that, but it's just, I don't know why it's coming to this organization. I can see maybe some counting funding through one of the SIP programs or something, but it feels odd here. I don't know if anybody agrees with me or not. But despite the fact that I love your project and love the passion.
Yeah, maybe it feels a little bit more like hotel tax. Or
Yeah, maybe that.
I don't know. Gentlemen, you can help us
This
much more
project
with that.
certainly would be eligible for hotel tax, and I think you could make an argument that it could fit into the Community Investment Partnership Program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot with, economic development and helping businesses, and I think, our mix of things we do in a given year on the community-based stuff, I don't want to say is a little lacking, but I don't think we've had the requests in years past. I think, doing your own festival from the ground up, then, it could be a larger impact on the economic side, although I'm not looking at it on the, purely economic side. We've helped other organizations, fix roofs for more money. So not to
That's what I
not
mean.
yeah not I understand what you're saying, but from the standpoint of dollars for feet on the street, I mean I look at that as this could possibly be a big thing. So I mean I'll let everybody else speak as well, but I think it's a pretty positive initiative and can do some real good in Bethlehem for the arts. So.
Do you have any idea what you might expect attendance-wise? How it's hard to know. Anything on which to base it, because this is a first.
We're projecting, many of these performances, let's take the San Francisco House.
Right.
You can't hold one for 7 The Prometheus reduction, so you're going to get 300 people. But the festival will start with a parade, with an opening ceremony down on the river,
Okay.
bringing the different elements of the community together,
Okay.
the ceremony, celebrating ourselves. And then the closing ceremony will be a parade, which will end down an arts class, and, setting off whatever into the future. Those will have, those will touch thousands of people. So 10,000 people this time in that instance. So there's going to be these larger events, there's going to be these smaller events, but also PBS and Channel 69. They have said, listen, we will be a loudspeaker for you to get your message out through social media. So there will be major social media components where people can respond, contribute, and I think that everybody in Bethlehem, to one degree or another, will be touched.
Okay.
And wider.
Okay.
This has the, well.
I mean, I agree with your point. This probably doesn't feel like it's something that we typically, this isn't our typical request. You know, so I definitely agree with you. I also agree with Sean's point that I think we've supported the arts directly or indirectly in other ways over the years. I guess the good news in all of this is that we're the general purpose authority. So correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you know, we have pretty broad brush that we can, think we can take strokes with. So I think that's the good news in all of this. I'd like to just go back to the funding side of it for the moment.
Yeah.
So when we look at your sources, can you tell us what's committed? If you can just, so for example, we talked about the National Endowments for the Arts. You'll find that out in April. We've talked about the city. We've talked about Lehigh. There are no financial commitments there other than in kind through the police services possibly. But can you tell us what is, just tell us what's committed, please.
So essentially right now we're at a gap between a current gap because the sources we typically go to, the foundations we typically go to, you can't write for funding so far out.
Okay.
And so the National Endowment for the Arts, we wrote for over the summer, well, September we submitted,
Okay.
by our April.
Okay.
Last time we were in the first phase, we tried out in January, February, and then we launched the second phase. And this is sort of typical with this kind of
Okay.
Bill's been in talks with certain corporations, and they've not made 100% commitments, but pledges that we were interested in funding this. The development committee has been started meeting to really go after more businesses and corporations than individual donors. So right now, we have our sort of usual suspects, our annual funders to come in that we can then put towards this project. So that would be the Schubert Foundation, the Pennsylvania Council of Arts. That would also be an anonymous donor that pledges every year at the Fallon Family Foundation. So there are some of our usual, and called the usual suspects, that we will allocate towards the project. And what we're looking for now is to build it down until the foundations, which typically do come in for a large project like this.
Okay.
Other than the summary that you've seen here, the staff has not done anything as far as recommendations or review and analysis. If it would be helpful to the board, we'd be happy to do that and come back with some type of structured recommendation.
Are you going to be pulling off whatever you can pull off, like you said, if the funding, so if you received half the funding you're anticipating, you would still have a festival in Skim? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if that would be necessary, Mark, if they're still, I'm up to anybody to comment on that, but I'd be willing to make a motion to approve the request based on what was presented.
Okay, I'll second it.
Motion on the floor by me, seconded by Ms. Ferraro. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
No,
Leave it.
sorry, breaks my
It's
heart.
okay.
I love the proposal.
And one abstention by Neil, so congratulations. Looking forward to getting some seats to the festival. Paying
Yeah.
customer, of course. Very good. Thank you for coming. 5.2, solicitor fee increase, 5.2. Cecil Lucius is requesting a $5,000 increase in his fee to $30,000 for proposed 2017 St. Luke's bond issuance due to the expedited schedule and timing associated with this transaction. Attached for your review and approval, modified fee schedule acknowledgement that reflects that change. Please not hesitate to contact with any questions. Okay. John, this is solely based on requests that came in, timing of such? Okay. Okay.
And this is a fee that's reimbursed?
Yes.
So it's paid by the,
Yeah.
Okay. And St. Luke's
The
is in
borrower.
agreement with it? Okay.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Okey doke.
Do you need a motion for approval for that, or
I would suggest.
I'll make a motion?
Motion by Mr. Donahue,
Second?
second is Whitaker. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Thank you. 5.3, St. Luke's inducement / approval resolution. I believe we have Tom Lichtenwalder here. Mark, you want to give us the 2-second drill on this one, 2-minute drill on this one?
Yeah, so
Structure.
St. Luke's approached us about 2 weeks ago, looking to do a bond before the end of the year. Given the pending tax reform, it made sense for them to try to get it done before the end of the year, and I'll let Tom explain the project.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Tom Lichtenwalder.
Good morning.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Chief Financial Officer at St. Luke's for the last 30 years. And I feel like this is my annual visit to the GPA for another project. And I always say I won't be back next year, and I show up anyway. So thanks again for your
We
time.
like seeing you, Tom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like a Christmas gift every year.
It might be a small Christmas gift to the county for the end of the year, which is always good to balance the budget or help balance the budget.
You didn't come in, Touchstone wasn't getting money today. No, I'm kidding.
That's probably why you approved it. You figure I was going to use some money, give them some money.
Comes
all
in, it
works
goes out. Only
But,
kidding, I'm sorry.
We have a few projects going on, and as Rick said, we really moved this up because of the pending legislation, which, just so you know how that will work, if that legislation gets passed, as an example, this $100 million bond issue would cost us an additional $20 million in interest expense over the life of the bond. That's how significant that legislation is. And I know the government needs the money and is desperate, but it's going to be detrimental to nonprofits. But enough said on that political front. So we have a few projects going on. We always do, but the two main ones is we will be building a new replacement hospital down in our Quakertown community. So we have a Quakertown hospital in Bucks County, right in town. We purchased land out in 663, closer to the Turnpike, between 309 and Turnpike, probably about 6 or 8 years ago, and we're going to construct a new hospital there, a replacement hospital. The second, more important to Northampton County, of course, is the continued growth of our Anderson campus. And we just, fortunately, good news on the business side, it continues to exceed expectations. We continue to exceed capacity. We have more and more days where there are literally no inpatient beds to put patients. So what happens is if you come into the emergency room, you have to get admitted. You get to sit in the emergency room longer until we get a discharge or until we can find you a bed maybe in Fountain Hill. That's not a good scenario for our patients. Obviously, they're sick, they want to be at Anderson, their doctors at Anderson. So the plan is to construct an additional wing, about 180,000 square feet, another floor of acute care beds, which is about 36 beds. And then we'll also open an additional maternity unit. So we do first nursery in Fountain Hill. We have not started that at Anderson, but again, with the growth in the community at that part of Northampton County and the growth at St. Luke's, we feel we really need to offer that service to the patients that live in Easton and other parts of Northampton County. So we will do that. And then just general growth in more outpatient services. As you probably know, we just opened about a month ago across the street the new ambulatory surgical center, and that's doing very well. We were hoping that would decompress the operating room so that we could do all of our outpatient surgery across the street in the ambulatory surgical center, and if you were an inpatient, all the inpatient surgery in the main hospital, again, to free up space. So, good problem to have as a business person, but it's not something you want to continue as a service to our patients. So those are the two main projects. Obviously, there's always the routine purchase of equipment and renovation of buildings. That's just routine, as I said. And so we're looking to do not to exceed $105 million. Actually, those two projects alone will be $125, $135 million. So we'll be taking some cash out of our investments to help pay for it. So the bond issue would be about $100 to $105 million.
You're not reducing the size over in Fountain Hill for the maternity unit, right? You're not like
No,
you're still going to keep that in.
Yeah, it's interesting. We thought when we built the Anderson campus about 6 years ago that the Fountain Hill campus would get smaller.
Yeah.
And it did for literally 6 or 8 months, and then the volumes start growing. It now has more volume than it had before we opened the Anderson campus.
Okay.
So we actually are lacking space on that site as well, and trying to deal with that. So again, good problem to have as a business person. I'm not sure if it's the age of the population. We do hire more physicians, which refer more patients, and we have more outpatient centers throughout the valley, and they're all referring more business down to us.
Very good.
So no, the maternity wing would not shrink in Fountain Hill.
I would have liked that like 18 years ago because we were doing great getting there for my daughter's birth until we hit the bridge going across.
Yeah.
And it was the Sunday night of closing of Music Fest with fireworks. So my pregnant wife, as traffic just stops because people decide to stop. That's my St. Luke story. We were doing great until we hit the bridge.
The bridge can be a bottleneck.
Do you see the change in the maternity ward in Fountain Hill because of Anderson campus? Do you think that's going to impact?
Do I see the Fountain Hill changing? I mean, there'll probably be, again, short term, there'll probably be some of that volume will go to Anderson, and then we anticipate it would just grow again, similar to what we've seen on the adult side.
Because Sean was Music Fest, I was a Can't Tell Me funeral.
Okay.
Got stuck behind.
Can't tell me.
And I mistimed pretty dramatically the time in between contractions.
Yeah. We try to keep moving more and more service to Anderson. We move more doctors over there to decompress parking.
5 minutes makes a difference.
Volume, but
ease of getting in and out of there is
we know
fantastic.
we know sooner move volume over, and then the volume grows again in Fountain Hill. So,
Are you going to be closing the hospital down in Quakertown when you open this new one, or?
no, what we'll do is we're going to demolish the older parts of the hospital. We'll keep the medical office building up, which is probably no more than 15 years old, and then we'll keep up the newer part of the hospital. We'll service the behavioral health patients. Unfortunately, that's a growing service throughout the area, not just in Quakertown, but we'll probably see that volume grow, and then all the acute care business will be done over in 663.
Well, I'm very happy with Anderson. I'm just about switched
We
up.
get lots of
It's so
accolades for the Anderson campus. Well, it's easy to get to, it's easy to park, easy to maneuver, get in and out of when you go to the bigger hospitals like Fountain Hill, or even Lehigh Valley Cedar Crest, because it's very congested.
Has the proposition of the Lehigh Valley Hospital at the interchanges north of you, has that affected you guys in long-term planning? No?
No, I know they have plans to do things in Nazareth and Quakertown and
Mhm.
elsewhere, but we do what we feel we need to do strategically, and I'm sure they do the same.
Yeah. Very good. Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you coming in and continuing to work with us on these, so.
Yeah, again, I apologize for the short notice, but with this legislation, we need to move quickly to save that money.
Doesn't bother us at all. It's John that has to use the word.
Yeah, John has.
And staff, sorry. Throw them
I
under the bus,
called
too.
John and Rick probably a few weeks ago. We might be doing some things, we're not sure what yet, but this
As we
legislation.
approach New Year's Eve, things may get a little bit interesting.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you're right, we have to close this by the end of the year. We have to.
Right.
Okey doke. We have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Ms. Whitaker,
I'll second.
second Mr. Copland. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming in,
Thank you
Tom.
very
Good
much
to,
for your
good
time. I appreciate
get the
it.
updates.
And your support, obviously.
And just as a supplement, the TEFRA hearing's been scheduled, the advertisement's been done, and the county council has to pass a health, safety, and welfare resolution. That will be on the council's agenda for December 14th.
Okay, that's next week, right? And then Tefra's going to be at the new
TEFRA's
offices.
December 15th at the new offices, that's
Okay.
correct.
We have the council.
Just to make sure
Yeah,
that
7
St.
and
Luke's knows there's a new
14.
office.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the health, safety, and resolution will be on the 14th. It's only
Okay.
one,
So
Okay.
you keeping Dallas hopping?
should be non-controversial. Yeah, you know what I mean, Peg.
He played lacrosse for me at Lafayette. I coached him years ago, yeah. Please tell him I said hello. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Very good. 5.4, Paul Deary, artist project, Art for the Park.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Thank you very much for having me and entertaining this presentation. My name is Paul Deary. I am a local artist and business owner. I've had PM Landscaping, which is a landscape contracting company here in Easton for the last 17 years. I was a teacher at Easton High School and Easton Elementary School, the Forks Elementary School. Oh, thank you. Forks Elementary School for 3 years from 2008 to 2010. So I've been interconnected throughout the Lehigh Valley in lots of different ways over the course of my time living here since 1998. My goal here, my mission here is really pretty simple. I want to bring more art to the public. In my line of work, I drive around the Lehigh Valley quite a bit to get materials and look at jobs and meet clients. And recently, within the last year, especially up where all those distribution hubs are happening north of 22, I've noticed more and more just like these vacant open spaces, and it just occurred to me that, there could be space for people to be able to enjoy, engage, and have an artistic experience. But then realizing that the private sector would be difficult to penetrate, to be able to find the ability to realize a project, I thought that maybe the public sector would be an opportunity to be able to look into, investigate, and hopefully, find some funds to realize a project. So my project is a sculpture project that would be situated in the idea would be behind one of the county parks, where people go instead of as an artist working and exhibiting over these years in the Lehigh Valley, often in galleries or museums. There's this very small audience that gets to experience those arts. So in my growing participation in the arts, I've done a couple of other public projects here in the city of Easton. I have one of the bicycle racks that was They were commissioned a few years ago, or a handful of years ago. They ran that program for 3 years, where they had some money that was put out there for competitions for artists to submit proposals. So I won one of those, and my project is down along Larry Holmes Drive across from Riverside Park. And then also the Carl Stern Arts Trail, which is also here in Easton, and another public space for art to be realized. And I was granted a commission through a competition to realize a project there. And they've had great community responses. The bicycle rack, obviously, to be used by the community. It's an interactive piece with bells that hang from it. And my project in the Carl Stern Arts Trail is called Waterway, and it's an interactive walking through piece that is supposed to give the viewer the experience of the trail and the Bushkill Creek that goes through the park. With this, I wanted to try to, I want to build a sculpture in one of the county parks that would not only engage the community, but work with a community organization in some respect in the realization of the project. So some of the money that I'm asking for is going to go towards research and development to try to pinpoint the best material with which to build the sculpture. And that is going to be somewhat determined on how much community or community organization can be involved. For instance, I know that I can weld it out of steel and make the structure out of steel, but Smooth On Company has different products where people, kids, youth could get involved in sort of like coating that structure with like an epoxy material that would get them, not just me building it, but it would get an organization or a group or a youth group in the actual participation of the building of a piece. If that would be too much to ask in terms of insurances, then I would work with an organization to maybe do some landscaping that would be at the base on the grounds around the piece. If it were to be made out of wood, I could work with educational institutions, either Lafayette or Easton or Boys and Girls Club or Community Center here, to work on painting it or finishing it in some way. But the idea would be to get like actual hands-on work of a community organization in the realization of the sculpture. Part of this also is, in my mind, what I want to see is I want to dedicate some time with the initiation of a program so that this wouldn't be a one-time thing. This would be something that could be done like biannually, like every couple of years, where there would be again a collection of funds to put it out to other artists nationally, locally, regionally, to invite them to have space maybe in one of the parks. So I'm looking at Wyatt Hittuck Park, Louise Moore Park, those places that have some pretty large open areas that would be an attraction or a draw for people to go to. I mean, they're already going there, bring your kids, play, walk, do this, but then there would be the added attraction to engaging in the park and working with the community to get them out there and giving them something to experience. So the program would be setting up a small committee or / jury that would take submissions from other artists, put a call out for artists. There are a few online resources that that send announcements out to artists to get proposals, and then look over those proposals, have a certain funding base, and then pick the best one that would fit within the parameters of a community-based organization in a public place for exhibition. That's really it.
Your current work? You have some...
Oh, right now, my current work, I'm exhibiting. I have an exhibition at Lafayette College right now that's up. I have an exhibition that is at a local gallery here at the Silk Mill, the Brick and Mortar Gallery. I just participated in the Art Museum, Allentown Art Museum, Cocktails for Collectors fundraiser, and then hopefully this. And then looking into the future, I have another show set up at a local, or I'm working with Muhlenberg College to take some of my paintings, because the paintings are based on an integration between color and music, so I work with the different programs artistically and musically, and have student involvement in that exercise.
Forgive my ignorance here, but where is, and I don't know that I'll pronounce it correctly.
It's down, I was looking myself.
Yeah,
It's down near
along
the
river.
Delaware River. It's, I would say, just south, it's right near, just south of 78.
Did you go to the 78 bridge?
It looks like it's on 611.
Wyhetta Park runs laterally. It has part of the canal.
I was trying to
It's a big
understand what
open
it
field.
stood
There's
for.
not really anything. It's a nice park. That's where I park
It
my
looks
car.
like a
go
nice
run.
park.
I park there and then run down the river.
Yeah, I was looking at the county parks because it was a public space that was outdoor that people already go to and engage in those park spaces, and then just to have an artistic thing, sculpture to enhance their experience and give them more art in their lives.
That gets a lot of like the bikers and runners a place to stop.
And Louise Moore Park, if you don't know, has a large walking trail that goes into their back open space. And I haven't started any communication with those parks. I wanted to talk with this body first, with the sort of backing or reinforcement of the idea. When I would approach said individual park, it would have more tooth or more meat to it to actually get something going.
I might think a little outside of the box, but when you started your presentation, it piqued my interest that you started talking about the development of the Lehigh Valley and the growth of the Lehigh Valley, and I think that's what we were talking about earlier, that we try to do things that are community and economic development oriented, but that you might have, I think, and I don't know that these were your exact words, but you thought that you might have a hard time bridging the gap between, the private sector and the public sector to put art in, at 33, for example, at Shren Commerce Center, or something like that.
Right. What inspired? I'm sorry.
But could you talk? Actually, that's a good point. Can you again? Is that what inspired you initially?
Well, the specific moment where I pulled my car over and I started walking around on the grounds was when I was driving up on 512 North, going up toward Bath. Landscape Products is the company that I use, and all of those massive distribution centers and warehouse buildings that have been put up there, which are architecturally nice, and they've done nice landscaping, and they have the pathways and walkways and benches for everything. But there were just like all these just open spaces, and if somebody that works there is out walking, that it just seemed like I could just envision the piece or a sculpture in one of those open spaces that as you're driving by you can see, as somebody is walking by, if they're working there or on the lunch break, can see or engage in. So that was the moment that sort of inspired the idea to try to get or find a way to get more art out to the public so that they can have more of an experience with it. Because oftentimes in the arts community throughout the Lehigh Valley, it's unfortunately relatively insular that go to like the galleries and the museums. You really very much see the same people that go to these events. And it's a little frustrating for me as an artist because I was an educator, and I've done a lot of community work and public artwork. And there are projects out there. I would just like, I'd like to just see more. Carl Stern Arts Trail is a public space. There's been some projects here in Easton. They had the donkey or the mule project in Bethlehem a few years ago. The Allentown Art Museum just rebranded their whole identity, and they're putting more community-based exercises and work out there, and their approach to engaging. So I just, it's great. It's encouraging to see. But that's what I was thinking, that the public space would be a more available space to reach more people and have more people be able to engage in the maturity work.
Paul, do you have the county's approval to put your art, within the land that you've identified here at this juncture?
That is something that I am looking to secure, or would be spending time to be able to do that.
And then is that going to be something similar, what you choose to, words-wise, I guess, put together? Is this actually a prototype of what you're planning to do?
Right, this is a model, this is a prototype. The sculpture, it started off with the idea of community, and just like, it's kind of blatant, that idea has developed into another phrase, but the sculptures work as a word, so it spells community, C-O-M-M-U-N-I-T-Y. So as a piece of work, as somebody would approach it, you have the title of the piece, and then it hopefully would engage them into like spelling out or trying to figure out the phrase or word. It evolved into, I thought, something that would be a little less blatant and a little bit more far-reaching as a concept, which would be titled "Together We Stand." And again, it would be built in a similar way. Oh, I have a little, just to give you a sense of scale, sorry. This is a little thing I had to throw together last night. But this sort of gives you a sense of scale as to, so this is my little
Flat Stanley.
my little guy, yes. What do you say, not Flat Stanley?
Flat Stanley.
It's kind of Flat Stanley. So it gives an idea of like what I'm thinking in terms of size, about 10 feet, 12 feet, something like that.
Awesome.
And I've worked on projects that large. The China Tree sculpture, which is down, which is the bike ride sculpture that's down along Bushkill, Larry Holmes Drive, across from the Riverside Park. That's about 12 or 13 feet high. So structurally, I'm familiar with working with that size of the project. Landscaping, over the years, for 17 years, I understand the depths and the ins and outs of working on an extensive project that's involved with different types of materials and installation in the landscape. So I feel like my experience is strong enough there to be able to see the project through and all of its steps and stages. The Together We Stand one would be a little taller because obviously there are more words and more letters and words.
It's really awesome.
And unfortunately, I had the model here, but when I was downstairs going through security, I had it covered in bubble wrap because I didn't want it to get wet. And when he pulled the bubble wrap off, it's pegged together as a sketch with dowels, and it kind of came apart. But because of security, he had to check it, and he went like this, and it was like, oh. But this one was not. So this is the example that I have as the maquette or the model.
This is completely off the topic, but does anyone old enough here like me to remember the Bermans and all the artists, all the sculpture and all the great works of art that they sponsored everywhere?
Wow.
We need
still
them.
Be relatively young. I don't remember.
Some of it was.
Some people are painfully aware.
Some people are painfully aware of it. Yes.
I thought he was a sportscaster.
But we need, too bad we need some sponsors of art.
Yeah, and it seemed like, I've worked with the city before. I've worked with Lafayette College and that private organization before in the realization of the project. It seemed like a great thing for the GPA to get involved with, for the county to get involved with, and have that as a growing part of their portfolio, especially with the growing identity of the arts and culture in the Lehigh Valley, getting more and more and stronger and stronger. It was a great presentation earlier by the Touchstone company to add another festival in the arts. It's really great to see.
Yeah, and I'm a little more familiar with Paul over the years in the Easton community, but I've been kind of following his art career as it's been coming along, and at Lafayette College specifically. He's the piece he's talking about, the pieces he's talking about at Lafayette were his paintings, and the paintings are, this really intrigued me when you were going over this with me, but he had a big production last week, but you also had music was involved. It was more of a collaborative, it was like music, dance, all centered around his paintings. The paintings are depictions of...
They're the Goldberg variations by Bach. So I've worked with transposing or translating musical works, musical compositions into color designs. But it's a note for note. So if you look at one of my paintings and you could read it, you could actually play the painting because each color in the painting represents a specific note. And the goal along those lines has always been to have a really integrative, immersive experience for the viewer so that you not only are looking at the painting, but you have a musical component. And then in this opportunity, Lafayette also brought in a dance company that was working with the piano performance. So it really became a whole culturally immersive experience for those people that were able to be able to check it out. And that's also growing as well. And like I said, I was hoping to work with Muhlenberg or maybe another Lehigh Valley institution to maybe work with their music program in the realization of one of those projects or a couple of those pieces.
How long would it take you to fabricate this once?
Well,
you have
so as a landscaping company, I have the winter months, quote unquote, off. It's my off season, so that was the time I was really going to dedicate toward contact of county park system, development of that relationship, research and development of pegging down materials. I was also just thinking recently to work with a local mill company to make these pieces cut out of wood. So if they were like 2 feet high, and then you could work with a local establishment. That's another thing. I was also going to try to work with as many local companies as possible. Like a friend of mine runs a studio out of his shop, Caffrey Studios. I was looking at Stark Lumber or Stark Millwork up in is that Halifax?
Okay.
191. So I was going to spend the winter sort of doing those aspects of it, materials investigation, research and development, and then the fabrication to happen in the spring, which would take a few months. So I was hoping to realize and install by the beginning of the summer.
Okay.
Good weather and
Sure.
yeah.
Would you expect any money from the county for placing this in the county?
No.
No.
This is the first my first foray into trying to get funding for this. Like I said, it was as a public piece. I was looking into public organizations.
I mean, other than the general purpose authority,
I
which
haven't approached
the
any
county
other
itself.
group, no. It just seemed like, again, how you explained it earlier, like that you paint with such a broad brush. It seemed like a good opportunity to have to get recognized as a
It's a pleasure meeting you, too.
Helene, I don't recall what the word was you used earlier, but or the expression you.
Purview.
Yeah.
That was a good word, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not as eloquent as Helene. I like this idea, and I guess I'm struggling with how this fits, but you heard me say earlier, the good news is we're a general purpose authority, and we can have a pretty broad brush if we want to. I really like the idea of trying to do it somewhere in an area where there's been economic development that has taken place, like, for example, at the 512 North, where Guardian, I'm sure, where Guardian has built their building and the warehouse is behind. You could think of LVIP 7, heading down into the south side of Bethlehem. You could look at Shrine Commerce Center. My opinion, for what it's worth, is I'd like, would you be willing to, and I'll phrase that as a question, would you be willing to revisit the placement of something like this?
Of course, absolutely. It's not nailed down to any specific place. Again, I was thinking public, so that's why I was thinking parks.
For example, Liberty Property Trust typically has always had art in their parks, and because they've typically had walking paths within their parks for the employees. So, I like that idea.
Yeah, and Sean, I think that's a great idea to consider a place that really, not to say that the parks there's not traffic to or activity, but to the point of economic growth and development is to improve something or to build upon something that's really active and chance to be viewed. I think it helps you also in the long run to become more noticed if you're looking this as a starting point to build something on the ongoing basis. I mean, you could look at the LVIP parks also as a possibility. Some of the municipal townships, too, have some general space that are very noticeable and in the areas that Sean is describing. So, I think that would be my druther to try to tie it all together. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I guess my idea with the parks was to try to also to try to bring more people to the parks. I understand what you're saying is like it doesn't necessarily have the foot traffic, but to try to get them utilized more. I mean, you drive by those parks and there's like maybe 1 or 2 cars parked in them at a time. So that was another driving factor of that idea. Plus, they also have some roadside space, so that even if they're not going to the park, people can enjoy it as they would be just going their daily commute, so to speak. Shines in the light at one angle, and catches their eye.
Who owns and maintains the sculpture?
Oh, the county owns the park, but I mean, if it was a commissioned piece by the GPA, we would be owning a piece of art, would be my thought. I mean, maybe
And I
I'm
would
wrong.
certainly, as
Maybe I'm wrong.
I've done with like the waterway project on the Arch Trail and the Chime Tree, like because I'm local and close and a landscaper, I've done a lot of maintenance on those myself, and that would be something that I would be more than willing to take on the responsibility.
Is there a lot of maintenance with something like that, or is it like
That's
you
what I
just
said,
set it in and
Don't
let
they
it go?
just weather and get more beautiful as they
That's
get
the
a
idea.
patina?
That's the idea, right? Yeah, one idea was to I want to investigate doing it in bronze. That's my least favorite option because I think it sort of locks it into being like very many other sculptures and doesn't carry a uniqueness to it. Plus, it doesn't allow for as much possibility of community engagement if I can cultivate a relationship with like the Boys and Girls Club or community center. I know I can work something with an education organization, like with a high school class or with Lafayette has a great outreach community class that they run, and I'm really good friends with Jim Toy, who is in charge of that program. So I know that I can work in that direction to get hands-on involvement, which is something that I'd really like to do. But I'm not against the idea of doing it like in bronze.
I just have one question for John. Is there any potential liability? Someone climbs this and gets hurt to the GPA if we commission it?
Well, if you commission it, I would say not much. You own it, much more.
Yeah.
So it would be commissioned, but it would stay there in perpetuity and, county.
You're defining as
I mean,
commission as paid for.
Yeah.
I am interpreting commission as paid for, but not owned.
Not owned, yeah. I wouldn't recommend owning the piece for that very purpose.
But what if it goes up in value and we could sell it?
I-
I'm only kidding. I'm only
I
kidding.
was-
I'm only kidding.
I was
only
hoping he
kidding.
would say, I was hoping he was going to say copper or silver. That was his choice of metal.
The GPA, under Pennsylvania law, may have immunity from liability, but I'm not sure we want to go there.
You have no more, and again, just because I've dealt with this stuff with coaching, and you're in a park. The park has a swing. There's no more liability than somebody visiting
There's
there
going
than,
to be-
than somebody going down a sliding board.
If
It's
somebody
not,
wants,
somebody can climb anything.
If a child is hurt,
Yeah.
there's somebody somewhere in my profession that will find a way to bring litigation.
Paul designed that with like nooses and razor blades on it. And it was this really
Yeah.
crazy,
But
like,
with
yeah,
the
oh,
little pigeons.
yeah, yeah, no,
It's
no.
impossible to climb.
But,
There is another, the other version of this, which was the Together We Stand, was a more tighter knit arrangement of the letters. Again, to work with not being too high, and also to maybe get away from.
Well, the other thing is just use the word "ooh," and you'll never have a problem.
You may have the same issue with the county. county owns it.
Well, I mean, I've done work with the city. It's a sculpture it's a tree. The tree, so you can climb the tree. The waterway project is actually something you're supposed to walk through, but kids climb all over it and jump all over it. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but it hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of public art out there and a lot of public spaces.
I'm not sure what to do. I can make a motion that we table this until we identify another area, or I'd be willing to make a motion that we approve this request, call it contingent upon a mutually acceptable place. And I think where we may be able to help is maybe we can bridge the gap between staff. Maybe we can bridge the gap to some landowners in the private sector, like you've identified. Whether
if this body feels more comfortable, in a place that would be more economically viable, is that what you said?
Economically visible.
Engaged.
Yeah, just visible in the sense that there's a lot of things trending today, and the two Seans know this, relative to living where you work, so to speak. But the trend in the marketplace is to have living space within the office where you work, in the office parks that you work in a lot of ways. And I just think that this presents an opportunity to increase visibility, not to diminish the park systems whatsoever. I think it's obviously to encourage attendance there in that sense. But I just think what Sean broached and brought up makes a lot of sense.
And to that end, the phrase can change. I like the "Together We Stand" because it represents. I thought about United We Stand, but then I thought it was a little bit. Anti-American, of course, but it was a little bit like too American. Like Together We Stand was more of a broad-reaching
diversity
to it. Right. And it speaks to all age levels and all groups.
I mean, I'm sure the county even has, say, a fall. I agree with Neil's and Sean's thinking of could it be somewhere else? But I think the county, it's an easy placement. If we just said, hey, what park is viable? Is it Waihatuck? I think you'd get Stan Rugas, the Director of Public Works, to say, sure, that's great. Somebody's going to bring us something, cool and install it. But as a fallback, I mean, I say maybe keep that as a fallback, but if there is an idea for somewhere where it's more, I don't know what's going on LVI, you're doing work with LVIP.
I'm not aware that LVIP has any artwork, and that may be intentional.
Yeah.
As opposed to I think I'm LVIP's environmental counsel.
Yeah.
Rob Jacobs is regular counsel. I can't believe LVIP has not been approached, but I'm not seeing any artwork in any
I agree.
The county does have fairly extensive rails and trails. Now, that's not highly visible, and wants to complete that. In fact, it's been the subject of a P3 discussion.
I like it right here, the courthouse.
But that may not be the visibility that you're contemplating. To have something up in Lower Mount Bethel Township along a trail may not be highly visible.
In Sean's words, I mean, maybe I'm sorry, Tim. Sorry.
Community and economic development works both with the county, obviously, and with open space. We also do a business concierge activity with most of the developers and most of the business people in the area, and certainly throughout the county. This seems like the type of project that if it would come through us, we would make those connections. We would help the artist, answer some questions and kind of make decisions in advance, and then come back to you and bring you the kind of the finished product, if you will. That as far as that, we'd be delighted to take that.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, if you're not, nailed down to the where, I mean, there may be we're just thinking, say outside the box a little bit, but I hate that saying. There may be a community dying for an art installation in one of their downtown areas or a park or somewhere else. That would be. So maybe the Sean's point, maybe contingent on location being nailed down, you know.
Well, I think what piqued my interest was when you described, the aha moment was, 512, warehouses, growth, economic development. And that's really what piqued my interest because, whether we like it or not, the reality is that part of what's growing our area right now is the warehouse distribution market. And, it is creating jobs in the local community, and that's allowing people to live, work, and play here. And that's really what piqued my interest in what you were describing. And so I kind of say, what I thought I heard you also say was, well, I wasn't really quite sure that I can make the connection with those with those companies or those developers to do that. So I think that's a perfect idea with the department's help, if we can help bridge that gap for you, and maybe just, maybe I'll make a recommendation that we table the discussion for now, but when we know exactly what we're talking about, maybe bring it back to this body. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to spend or do during this off time was to cultivate and figure out that relationship, specific, like as to the where it could go.
Under that scenario, I would be supportive of this.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Sean, to table?
I'm not sure. Again, I would do it either way. I could make a motion to approve, contingent upon, the final product, where and, what, where, and when, or we can table it. I'll leave that.
An approved receiving location, something of that kind of.
Well, I think the what is significant too, is subject, that we supported, subject to, the finalization in Paul's mind of, what the art's going to be, where it's going to be, and when is the completion date going to be. That kind of makes sense to me, Sean. In that sense, because then it gets the authorities' stance on it, so whether to spend any more time on the project or not, or figure out how to go on to something else.
I'll tell you what, how's this? I'll make a motion that we approve it, subject to staff involvement and coming back for final approval of the what, what are the words you're going to use, what, I don't know that we necessarily need to see another model of it, because I think the words are important. Where and when would it be placed? So I'd be willing to make that motion.
Can I ask, really?
You can't say Notre Dame, John.
No.
Just don't.
A question based on ignorance.
No.
Are you requesting funds from the GPA?
Yes,
How much?
40,000.
Because I didn't hear that mentioned anywhere.
It's in the proposal.
That's in the proposal.
Helene and I were having a sidebar. I just
Okay.
want to
Yeah,
make sure
it's in the proposal.
it's $40,000.
In the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
It's
just-
supposed to be
budget.
40,000 a week, right?
Pardon me?
It's supposed to be 40,000 a week.
Yeah. Spin the
Okay,
wheel.
so
Spin
And
the
that was
wheel.
partially for
Missed
research and
the-
development.
It's the $40,000 pyramid.
you're, just to be clear, embedded in your motion is approval subject to the conditions to provide a grant in the amount of $40,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Very good. Mark and/or Dave, Tim, whoever's gonna may put the word out. I mean, there might be somebody. There might be people fighting. There might be people fighting for it.
Actually, I really want to approach LBIP.
My yard would
I
be
think
great.
they're a logical entity.
Yeah.
So
You want to center on that or a community, like you know what I mean?
Now, another thing that may happen, if I can interrupt, in the research and development aspect of this, there may be like smaller versions that could go to like a community center. And then the final version, which would be the largest version, would be in more of a public outdoor space. But in the research and the exercise of checking out some of these materials, I'm going to be building them. but on a smaller scale.
Oh,
So
okay.
whether or not it be made out of bronze and that's all part of the proposal as well.
Yeah.
Or steel or whatever, that there would be other possibilities.
One
And
could fit in the
I would
rotunda, one-
think we could come back to you guys with like kind of a range of options.
Okay.
That, of things that we've explored, and yes, LVIP would take one, and yes, the county parks would take one, and these are the different locations we've identified and have kind of vetted out, and you guys can decide where you want your commissioned piece of art to go.
No, I agree with you. I think LVIP 7 in particular is a great. You look at, the former Bethlehem Steel site.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Commerce Center Boulevard, the county put that in.
That's a lot
They
of-
may be all public. That may all be public property. I'm not sure LVIP owns anything anymore in that front. Because their game plan is to build the
Lehigh
dedicated
Valley Industrial
sell
Parks.
and
So
sell.
a lot of the.
Well, for example, they own their office building there, and that's, highly visible. Could you do something? That's where that's an area where you have a lot of the the big box warehouse distribution being built. You have the intermodal facility. You have the, whether you.
Colleen's being humble. She
Yeah.
she mentioned the Greenway,
Yeah, the greenways.
which is
Yeah.
really visible.
The greenways are
You have the park.
Goes all the
So
way.
I think there's a number of options, and I think we'll charge the staff with trying to come up with where.
Yeah.
Working with Paul.
Very good. Well, thank you for
Sean,
coming in.
outside the new dorms, Lafayette.
That's not nice. The scale would need to be 70 feet higher and it wouldn't even obstruct the building. Okay, old business. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Old business, 6.1, the Bedco request. Believe we are in, put back my pack here. Touchdown. Okay, Bedco, $150,000 loan for emergency stabilization of the Goodman Building. Okay. What we had talked about at the end of the last meeting was basically doing the $150,000 loan to Bedco as a remediation / what was our term? Not remediation. Blight remediation or blight repair. So I don't know. Is the paperwork done completely on this, John?
None of the work's done.
Okay.
I don't say that lightly, but I have not prepared any loan documents pending the outcome of a formal vote.
Yeah, and I believe we cleared up, the collateral issue for those who weren't following along at home. But, I'm okay with what we had proposed, what we came up with, that, we'll see, Paul, what Neil had proposed. Do the 2-year, 2% as part of the loan, highest priority.
The primary difference with this from the last motion was that we are partially securing the 150,000 where we're unsecured prior to. And I think given the position of the General Purpose Authority, the fact that these dollars, I think, the reason the city or Bedco is coming to us is because this is a non-bankable transaction. And needing to find a space to stabilize the Goodman Building. I think that's where a lot of the request is coming from. It's still very highly likely, and I think through the loan committee's conversations and emails, from John relative to, I think the city is going to be successful in its defending against the appealing party. when we'll be able to transfer over this deed where they have already, through the courts, the blessing to do. And that would be the modes, and our repayment, our primary repayment source of this will be to garner through this and be purchased by the Collaborative 3, I guess it's called, is the developer, and then moves on for repayment for our funds to be used again. I think, through Sean Donahue's suggestion relative to the collateral of the lots, partially securing it, they don't have what to entirely secure. They just don't have that availability. We looked at other lots, and they are not available to pledge that would fully secure us. If you ask my opinion, as I made the motion the last meeting, I do believe it's more highly likelier than not for us to be repaid, number one. I think we've taken that extra step to mitigate it by getting the lots, mitigating the amount if for some reason they should not prevail. And I would be happy to continue to make a motion on this with the one revision adding the 2 lots as collateral.
If I may supplement.
Okay, sure. I could take a breath, John.
It's like one of St. Paul's letters. The first sentence is 75 words.
Yeah.
When we spoke, or when this was discussed last time, prior to any collateral, there was embedded as part of the proposal that in the unlikely event the city did not prevail, the loan would actually be forgiven. In the unlikely event that the city does not prevail, while we have partial security, I don't want to put any words in the board's mouth, but I think politically the GPA would not foreclose on those 2 Bedco properties. So my point is that, again, maybe a very unlikely event, but if the city does not prevail, query what the GPA would do at that point.
I think we were moving more towards the mindset of a loan to Bedco for blight remediation, and what they do with that money is up to them. They're securing it with a collateral value of like $83,000.
Yeah, and you and I talked about whether or not we even wanted to mention specifically the Goodman building.
Again, I have no, if they want to back up some loan by some third party in some way and then pay us, that's on them.
Yeah.
But from our standpoint, I think we help Bedco by giving them a $150,000 blight remediation loan.
Right.
We keep it as clean as can be, and I'd be very careful about how we craft them.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay with that,
I think we need to keep it simple.
Yeah.
That keeps us out any ways, in the event there's future presentations
they come back to us
then,
another
then we
project.
We'll deal with those.
We'll deal with
my
that,
point
but
is,
I don't,
we'll deal with
I
those
don't-
at that time.
I think we've, again, I've lived my 35-year banking career as keeping it simple, which is very difficult in banking to do, but I would think we keep it as vanilla as possible.
Neil made the best comment to me that I've heard, and ties into what he said. If the city were to guarantee this loan, Bedco would not have to come to the GPA because it would be a bankable loan. Those words, Neil, when we met, he's dead right on.
So.
And this is subject to Bedco's approval. They may, and Alicia was very clear about that. It's not approved on their end yet. We may make this, they may come back to us and say no.
Right.
Respectfully, I'm not sure they have a choice.
Yeah, correct.
So the bottom line is the motion I'm making does not have a forgiveness clause in it. It's not contained in this memo. There is no forgiveness or implied.
We'll deal with that. I just wanted to mention that, and we'll deal with it if and when it comes up.
Right.
And hopefully it'll never come up.
That's the hope.
Okay, so we need to restate the motion, or?
I don't.
Well, again, the only thing I'll change about what's in the recommendation, to Sean's point, is I would make the motion to approve $150,000 loan directly to Bedco for blight remediation.
Okay.
Under the terms and conditions as
So you-
outlined. So I would almost.
So you want the removal of upon transfer of property,
Right.
whichever occurs first. It's just a 2-year term loan for
Right.
$150,000.
That is correct.
Okay.
It comes due and payable, and
That's-
that's their intention
Okay.
of repaying us,
Yeah,
but,
of a building.
And we'll deal with it,
and we'll
Okay.
deal with it down the road.
whoever's here.
Very good.
Right.
Just one question or point. It's land. I think we should ask Bedco in the city of Bethlehem what environmental studies, if any, they have on the property, just to be sure before we agree to take that. I don't know that we need to revisit doing any further studies if they have something, and I'm assuming they do.
Having a lien does not subject
Us
the
to any
GPA to
liability.
any liability.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no liability and again, I presume in your documentation, you're going to indemnify us with any environmental liability there.
That's-
So that's really, if we want it
Okay.
for history purposes, but we really don't have liability.
No,
Okay.
if we.
And we
if-
would be indemnified.
You know from the lender liability provisions, and only if you take possession and then actively manage the property, you start to cross the line.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough.
Very good. We have a motion made by Neil. We have a second.
Second?
Second by Helene. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
Sean, can I raise two things very, very quickly?
Sure.
Under new business. One, it's just informational. As we move from the end of this calendar year into next year, the amount of work with Debbie Borger could be significant with respect to the accounting for the P3 project. Sean and I have been in discussions with that with John Brown and others. It's just informational. But because in particular, the GPA owns the bridges, we're getting into questions about depreciable assets and other accounting-related issues for which there's no real precedent. So that's going to involve some work. And also, Sean, based on our emails, do you want to mention quickly the possibility of meeting elsewhere?
Yeah. There might be a possibility of some space in the Bachman Public House for GPA activities. We're kind of vetting that right now.
The logic being that the GPA, while it's created by the county, is really to some extent independent of the county. And as we continue to do projects and gather documents and store documents, Sean has raised with me and others, should the GPA kind of have its own space separate and apart from space in the county government center.
I have about 3 boxes already of my files are when I keeping up with just the emails and the postings, and it's been a little crazier than I envisioned. And I'd just like to have things housed in one specific spot, GPA-related materials and all that kind of stuff, just so it's not commingled.
That was actually in my notes, where you mentioned 3 offices and now I'll do that. It's human services building, could it not be more feasible for us to do this? That might be another option.
Are you talking about the meeting or just space to store and?
Both.
Both, okay. What is
Am
the
I right,
Bachman
both?
building?
Second and Northampton Street, Easton, the historic
The
building.
meetings can be
The building we had to take
Can
back
be
and then
recorded.
give to the genealogical, the building we pulled out of the fire
How's
for
the
them.
parking?
Um,
How's the parking?
about as bad as here.
It's accessible?
Is there space over at Emory?
There is plenty of meeting space at Emmerich, and
Any storage or office space?
we have our offices and part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, the administrative agreement that we have with the General Purpose Authority, that's part of the responsibility of the department is to store that stuff and make that stuff available. So, you have your own locked filing cabinet there. That's not a problem.
Emmerich
And
is,
that would certainly be more accessible.
Way easier, I think.
yeah, I don't know how long the county will be in Emmerich, because I think the lease expires.
Well, they have the money saved to buy it in my opinion.
We'll see, won't we?
I mean, I think the only meeting over there is not a problem. There's plenty of conference rooms. We can secure them. I think the only thing that differentiates that place from here is the ability to record the meetings.
That's, as solicitor LCI gave, even NCNJC, recording's not an issue. You just put a
No.
dictaphone right on.
But what I'm saying is, from a transparency standpoint, all of these meetings are taped and they are available on the county's website to view.
And who looks at them?
Yeah. And to that point, that's easy, because we can record it in any fashion we want, anywhere
right.
we want. And we already have the website set up, the new GPA website, which is going to be the
I think-
catch-all for GPA-specific things.
I think as
And they'll be on there.
As
So
we
the minutes will always
transition
be
to a new
updated.
county administration, the need for the GPA to have its own identity is even more critical, in my respectful view.
Okay. Well, that'd be for future discussion.
Right,
because-
but I did want to raise that.
Yep. Very good.
To John's point, relative to Deb Borger, there is a committee that's been formed that include the county and the GPA to talk about the valuation of the bridges in the
right.
whole county.
Yes.
And I've asked Debbie already to go back because of the additional work to kind of put some thoughts together relative.
She called me last week, and I
Okay.
traded
Yeah.
calls with her. She was in a meeting last Friday, so that's probably
Yeah,
what she was calling me
and
about,
Dave,
was
thank
to
you.
amend her contract.
This is not something that people haven't thought. It'll just be,
Yeah.
I
And
think
any of those accounting, any of those additional
we need to,
costs from any third party,
they get,
they get invoiced directly.
they get reimbursed
through
by the county.
So it doesn't, again,
Okay.
we're still in a position where this is,
Right.
this bridge endeavor isn't costing us as an authority more money.
And I think when we go through this year, then the years that will follow, we will have the groundwork in place where I think it'll become much easier to
Well,
work with.
and right now, we have one bridge done, so that's what everybody.
Exactly, right, okay?
Yeah, and we got the cost for those worked out last week. So that was
Yes, we did.
submitted, yeah. I
Yep.
didn't have to push further from the contractor to get that broken down. So every time they complete one, they're going to give it to us in that same format. There was some question last week as to the value for depreciation purposes of the
Right.
bridges. Before, there was never a value. Those bridges weren't on the books anywhere at any level with a value. But now, magically, we're creating value. So therein lies the issue. But we do have the format that works for everybody now, so we should be okay.
Maybe one of these arts guys can build a stagecoach for us.
There we go. I'm going back to carrier pigeon. Okay, staff report, DCD moved its offices. Any other staff report information?
Hopefully more on the LVIP shell building proposal, January or February.
Okay. All right.
And we'd like to recommend that DCED create a review and recommendation process for these out-of-the-ordinary requests to the GPA. Typically, the requests had been business-related. Now they're becoming less business-related, and they're getting requests from nonprofits and that sort of thing. We have a built-in process that we use for the grants that we supply, like the hotel tax, that we could certainly adapt and bring to the GPA as a standard policy. That way, you'd have kind of a pre-review before presenters came to the GPA, and we'd answer a lot of questions that you've had to ask up front. We'd be able to prep them, put them into a position where when they come to you and they ask questions, the questions, are good questions that would not normally be dealt with otherwise. So that's our recommendation, other than that.
Okay. You want to get something put together on paper and submit? Okay.
And Tim, could you coordinate? I mean, I realize it's all in your own department, but put it in with all the other programs, hotel tax. What should go where? Just that what should go where question is kind of the one that. I mean, I love taking. Just so you know, I love these kinds of projects that are coming forward. I just don't know.
Yeah,
and
as part of our
I just don't know
concierge
where
service,
they
we
should
would do
go.
that. Yeah, we
you know?
would do that as part of our initial review service. When we get businesses that come in and ask, how are we going to get something funded, that's the first thing we do, is we look at all the options that we have and say, well, what can the county do, and where's the most appropriate location? We would certainly do that with us and ask those questions first, so that by the time somebody gets up here to ask you, we know that this is the appropriate place for them to make that
And
request.
the other contemplation is as we go through the budgeting process is to determine how much money we are going to set aside for grants.
Right,
Well,
and this
Right.
may
So
help
that,
inform that.
and so that we live within that budget. and
That-
We didn't have 2 art grants in 17 years, let alone 2 at one meeting. But again, but in my view, you know, if we had $40,000 set aside a year specifically for those endeavors, that's great. Like, and again, you know,
I totally agree.
you know,
Just-
I almost feel bad that we don't
Well,
entertain more
DCED
things
would be
like that.
delighted to put
Yeah.
something together and bring it to you.
And
That's great.
we can reach out to you. You know, I think the thing that I always get a little uncomfortable about is, you know, I'd like to see us have like a budget and say we're going to do $40,000 towards art projects, and then make sure that all the various art organizations that could potentially be eligible for that know about it, can apply for it,
Right,
and
that's our
the review,
responsibility as
not just.
administrators. We can do that.
we need to be very, very, very careful as we go into the next 4 to 6 weeks in this regard. There is tax reform legislation enacted.
Right.
It will impact the GPA, and the impact will be very negative. And the revenue model of this organization could change dramatically for the worse. Under the House bill, the GPA's ability to do tax-exempt financing goes away. Under the Senate bill, the advance refunding component goes away. And the GPA has done some major advance refundings over the last several years. That will greatly diminish the administrative fees that the GPA collects from bond financings. Now, the GPA will still have the ability to do taxable financing. And that may actually be attractive for some people as long as interest rates stay relatively low. But if we see somewhere down the road a spike or an escalation in interest rates, I don't know to what extent taxable financing through entities like the GPA or NCIDA or LCIDA is going to be a viable option anymore for organizations like St. Luke's, and you heard it from Tom. The nonprofits, which have been the bread and butter of this organization, the colleges, universities, hospitals, you heard it. On the deal they're proposing, the increase would be $20 million. At that point, they may decide to look at conventional financing or EB5 or something else. So we won't know until we know. And unfortunately, I don't know what's driving what Congress is doing, because under the House bill, the savings was estimated at about $39 million over 10 years, which in a $4 trillion budget isn't even a rounding error. So I say that as a word of caution. I will keep monitoring it. I don't believe phone calls to Pat Toomey's office or anybody else probably is going to matter, because I think it's so big that it's beyond any one person's control, or even a few people. I think it's being driven by politics more than policy.
Very good. Next meeting, Tuesday, January 19th, 2018. Thank you all for another great year, staff. I appreciate all the
Thank
hard
you.
work. For all of our volunteers, thanks again.
January 9th.
January, what did I say?
19th.
Oh, well, I'm going to be about 10 days late then. January 9th, 2018. Okey doke. Thanks everybody. I'm sorry, motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Seconded? All those in favor? Aye.
Merry
Good.
Christmas to all of you.
Yeah, have a great holiday, everybody.